Elias Hart did not expect to be kneeling in a circle of 12 alien warlords while his B-box vibrated like a ticking bomb between them. The council chamber lights flickered, a six-eyed general hissed for guards, and someone screamed to evacuate the station. Through it all, Elias calmly whispered to the unseen swarm inside the box as though soothing a nervous child. This was not how his day was supposed to go. A few hours earlier he was tending hives behind his weathered farmhouse, swatting mosquitoes and humming to himself, not preparing to unleash the most terrifying 5 pounds of insects the galaxy had ever encountered. Yet here he was, kneeling in the center of the most powerful political institution in known space, while every alien present regretted underestimating a human who smelled faintly of honey and smoke. The day had begun in total peace. Elias had been gently lifting a honeycomb frame, inspecting the neat hexagonal architecture his bees crafted with an efficiency that soothed him. He cradled the frame like a fragile treasure, smiling at the lazy buzzing that drifted in warm spirals around him. The orchard trees rustled, the sun glowed through the veil of his suit, and the world felt comfortable, predictable, safe. That was when the sky ripped open. A shimmering oval the size of a tractor spun above his barn, glowing green and violet. A blast of wind sent leaves swirling as a ramp lowered from the hovering vessel. Elias expected soldiers or scientists, or maybe someone to shout a warning. Instead, 3 creatures descended who looked like a cross between owls, lizards, and blue water balloons. Their feathers shimmered, their eyes were enormous, and their posture suggested both authority and mild indigestion. The tallest one held a metallic tablet glowing with alien script. Elias did not move. He simply stared, blinked once behind his veil, and said the only words that felt appropriate. "I must be having a stroke." The aliens exchanged glances. The tall one made a soft clicking sound, followed by a metallic translation emitted from a badge on its chest. "Human Elias Hart, you have been selected as cultural representative. Prepare for immediate embarkation." Elias slowly lowered his honeycomb frame. "I am sorry. I think you have the wrong guy. I am a beekeeper. I keep bees. They are small. I do not represent cultures." The clicking grew more intense. The translation badge buzzed. "Your profile indicates unusual species harmony ratios. The Council believes your presence will decrease human volatility ratings. Your calmness frequency is statistically beneficial." Elias muttered under his breath. "Calmness frequency. Try saying that during tax season." The aliens signaled to their ship. A beam of soft light enveloped Elias, lifting him gently as his boots kicked uselessly. The honeycomb frame slipped from his fingers, but he managed to snatch the nearest bee box before it fell. If he was being abducted by glowing space owls, he was taking his bees with him. Inside the ship, Elias sat on a smooth bench while the aliens attempted polite conversation. They asked about Earth customs, agriculture, and the purpose of a hat with a net attached. When he explained that it was protective gear for working with his bees, they reacted with chirping laughter. The translator rendered it as amusement at primitive insect husbandry. Elias rolled his eyes and hugged the bee box closer. The journey lasted only minutes but felt like hours. Through the viewport, Elias saw a colossal ring-shaped station orbiting a swirling purple nebula. Shuttles glided in predictable patterns. Lights flickered like distant stars. It reminded him of a beehive in motion. Organized chaos, efficient and purposeful. Upon landing, the aliens escorted him into the main council hall. He was greeted by a semicircle of delegates varying from crystalline humanoids to slug-like diplomats balancing on marble cushions. Some stared at him with curiosity, others with disdain, a few with fear. The council speaker, a towering being with iridescent scales, addressed him. "Human representative, welcome. We convened today to discuss Earth's status regarding containment classification. Your role is to demonstrate that humanity poses minimal risk to the galaxy." Elias swallowed. Containment classification sounded an awful lot like being grounded by a cosmic parent. He opened his mouth to protest, but the speaker continued. "We understand humans have unpredictable temperaments and dangerous technological acceleration. Some delegates believe your species will soon require restriction. Others believe you deserve a chance to prove your now hostile intent. You will be given the opportunity to speak. Elias looked around at the massive chamber. Every alien eye was on him. His palms sweated. His heart thudded. He placed the bee box at his feet. The vibration from within offered comfort. The hum reminded him of home. One delegate, a spindly insect creature with mandibles like scissors, leaned forward. It pointed at the box with disdain. What is that primitive container? Elias kept his voice steady. Bees. They help me stay calm. The hall erupted in mocking chatter. Bees. Harmless buzzing creatures. Simply adorable. Primitive earth pets. How quaint. Elias tried to explain. They are not pets. They are a complex society. A hive operates with a level of coordination you may not understand. More laughter. Another delegate mimicked a buzzing sound, drawing snickers from its peers. Elias clenched his jaw. Their ignorance irritated him, but he remained composed. The council speaker tapped a crystalline staff. Begin the hearing. A series of holograms projected images of humans in chaotic situations, wars, protests, fires, sports celebrations that looked suspiciously similar to riots. Each image came with commentary about human unpredictability. Elias attempted to interject with reasoned explanations, but the delegates dismissed him politely. A representative from a warrior species slammed a clawed hand onto the table. Humans escalate conflict rapidly. They form swarms of aggression. They are dangerous. Elias sighed. Every species forms swarms. It is natural. Sometimes protective, sometimes disorganized. Bees swarm for many reasons. Not always bad. Bees again. More laughter. Elias glanced down. The bee box vibrated harder than usual. A deep, resonant hum pulsed through the chamber. Several aliens flinched. The vibration was faint but steady, like the coiling tension of a bowstring pulled back. The council speaker frowned. What is happening inside that box? Elias placed a gentle hand on the lid. They are restless. They sense agitation. Aliens shifted nervously. Suddenly bees no longer seemed cute. Elias exhaled slowly. The council underestimated humans. More importantly, they underestimated what humans could accomplish when working in harmony with something far older, far more organized, and far more patient than they were. The hum grew louder. Delegates stiffened. Guards stepped forward. Elias felt the change in the air the way sailors sense a storm long before clouds form. He whispered softly to the hive. Not yet. Not now. The hum quieted. Every alien watched him with a new, uneasy curiosity. The hearing continued, but the atmosphere was different. A beekeeper with a mysterious box had unsettled the entire council. And that was only the beginning. The council chamber felt colder when the hearing resumed. Elias stood at the center platform while the ring of alien delegates leaned back in their seats with a newfound wariness, their earlier mockery now tempered by the memory of the vibrating box at his feet. They pretended to focus on the official proceedings, but every flicker of their eyes drifted to the wooden container, as though it were a volatile explosive. Elias knew the bees inside remained calm, but their sensitivity to emotion meant the entire chamber's tension pulsed through them like a faint electric current. He whispered an apology to the hive under his breath, though he suspected they already understood more than anyone present realized. A holographic display shimmered to life above him, projecting scenes from Earth. Cities glowed with neon lights, highways crawled with traffic, humans argued passionately about everything from politics to pineapple on pizza. The delegates murmured among themselves, misinterpreting every scene with clinical detachment. One crystalline being, its body composed of living facets, pointed to footage of a crowded subway and proclaimed that humans voluntarily confine themselves in metal tubes despite visible stress indicators. Elias opened his mouth to explain but was cut off as the council scribes recorded the comment as evidence of human instability. Another hologram appeared showing a human running from a bee. The chamber erupted in snickers and chirps. A slug-like diplomat draped in ceremonial sashes oozed forward to comment that humans clearly lack appropriate respect for their own fauna. Elias resisted the urge to laugh ironically. The footage played again in slow motion, showing the human flailing while the single bee lazily pursued him with no real intent to sting. Several delegates theorized that humans must be irrationally terrified of small animals. Elias cleared his throat slowly. "I believe you have misunderstood that behavior," he said, keeping his tone measured. "Bees do not attack without reason. That one likely felt threatened. The human was simply reacting instinctively." The crystalline delegate countered with exaggerated politeness. "So your species fears the creatures you claim to understand." "Not fear," Elias corrected. "Respect. An occasional panic, but that is just being human." Laughter. Some polite, some mocking. A few nervous. The council speaker raised his staff, signaling for the next evidence packet. A new projection displayed footage of human emergency services rushing into burning buildings. Firefighters carried children, civilians formed chains to pass buckets of water or supplies, strangers helped strangers. Elias watched the delegates attempt to categorize these acts with clinical precision, debating whether humans should be classified as altruistic, self-destructive, or socially compelled toward impulsive aid. Elias inhaled sharply. "We help each other because it is right," he said. "Not because a system demands it. Our instincts are complicated, but many of them are good." The delegates murmured, unconvinced. A bulky warrior representative raised an armored hand. "Your species also chooses violence easily. This contradicts your claim of moral instinct." Elias hesitated, knowing he had to walk carefully. "Humans are emotional," he said. "But emotions are part of intelligence. They can lead to conflict, yes, but also to compassion and creativity and cooperation. And sometimes, unfortunately, very loud arguments at 2 a.m. More murmurs, some amused. The warrior delegate pressed further. "Humans engage in unpredictable escalation. They swarm without pattern. They frenzy." Elias blinked. "That does not sound like humans. That sounds like hornets." "Do not compare me to insects," the warrior snapped. "That is funny," Elias murmured, "because hornets would say the same thing about you." The chamber went silent for a solid 3 seconds before a few delegates emitted surprised hissing laughter. The warrior stiffened in offense. The council speaker had to strike the floor with his staff to restore order. "Enough. Continue the hearing." Another hologram appeared, clearly intended as damaging evidence. It showed a clip of a massive crowd cheering in a stadium, waving banners and shouting. The delegates interpreted the scene as tribal hostility rituals and possible pre-war frenzy. Elias pinched the bridge of his nose. "They are cheering for a game," he explained. "It is entertainment." One slug-like representative squinted. "This is considered enjoyable." "Sometimes," Elias answered. "Unless your team loses. Then it is emotional devastation for a week." Some delegates tilted their heads in confusion, others scribbled notes, frantically. The misunderstanding deepened with each passing moment. Elias rubbed the side of the bee box gently. The hum inside had softened. The hive was patient but attentive. Elias decided to make his case more directly. "If I may speak plainly," he said, "humans are not as simple as your data implies. We grow under pressure, we adapt, we collaborate across differences. We build communities that function despite chaos. You talk about swarming like it is a weakness, but a swarm can also be unity. A hive with individuals working for something larger than themselves." Several delegates scoffed. "Metaphors. Romanticization." Elias met their eyes one by one. "I keep bees. I see cooperation every day. Not forced unity, but natural balance. You think humanity is dangerous because you misunderstand our complexity. But complexity is not danger. It is potential." His words hung in the air. Some delegates looked thoughtful. Others skeptical. Then the sabotage began. A distant alarm sounded briefly before cutting off. A flicker of lights rippled through the chamber. Elias's stomach tightened. Something was wrong, though he could not yet name it. A faint metallic scent drifted through the air, sharp and cold. The bees inside his box reacted instantly. The hum surged like a heartbeat, spiking from calm to alert. The council speaker frowned. What is happening? Before anyone could answer, a panel on the far wall sparked. A containment seal disengaged with a grinding metallic whine. The doors behind the delegates shuddered as if forced by invisible pressure. Several guards ran to investigate, their armor clicking sharply. A tall, feathered representative screeched. This is unauthorized access. Who triggered it? Another alarm began, deeper and more urgent. The warrior delegate rose abruptly, mandibles flaring. This is sabotage. Someone seeks to disrupt the hearing. Elias felt dread crawl up his spine. The bees were responding to something, an agitation he recognized from the rare times a predator had approached his hives at home. He crouched, placing both hands on the box. The vibration was intense. Easy, he whispered. I know. I feel it too. A guard sprinted toward the council speaker but collided with the table as the floor lurched beneath them. A forced tremor rippled through the chamber. The guard stumbled into Elias, knocking the bee box sideways. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. The wood creaked. A faint but unmistakable click came from inside the box, the kind of sound only a beekeeper would notice. A latch shifting. A hive preparing. Delegates screamed. Guards drew weapons. The chamber descended into chaotic panic. Elias felt the air thicken with tension and shouting and fear. He lifted the box upright with shaking hands and whispered urgently into the slit between wood and lid. Not yet. Stay with me. But the bees had already sensed the threat. And the hive was waking. The chamber exploded into motion the instant the bee box clicked. Delegates scrambled from their seats, guards collided with one another, and the air filled with overlapping shouts and languages Elias had no hope of deciphering. The council hall, once an austere arena of debate, had devolved into something resembling a panicked farmyard. Elias clutched the box as if hugging a distressed animal, but the vibration inside told him the hive was already shifting into a defensive formation. He felt it through the wood like a pulse racing beneath his palms. Every instinct he had honed through years of beekeeping told him this was the moment just before the first sting. The moment when nature chose between tolerance and retaliation. A guard in shiny blue armor rushed toward him with a scanner raised. Step away from the container, human. The translation badge rendered the words with forced calm, but the tremor beneath the voice betrayed fear. Elias shook his head, shielding the box with his body. If you threaten them, they will react, Elias warned. Just back up. Slowly. The guard ignored him, stepping closer. The bees sensed the tension immediately. The hum inside sharpened into a low, synchronized buzz, a warning that vibrated through the metal floor. The guard froze. The sound was subtle but impossible to ignore, like standing beside a wasp nest the size of a car. Before anyone could decide how to proceed, the chamber lights flickered again. A door at the far end slammed open, revealing 3 aliens in dark armor and unmarked insignias. Their movements were precise, too deliberate to be guards caught in an emergency. Elias recognized the posture of conspirators instantly. One of them held a small detonator-like device, its display blinking with a countdown. Containment protocol disabled, the armored alien barked. Initiate evidence purge. Delegates shrieked. Elias felt his breath catch. So this was it. Someone wanted the council hearing sabotaged and humanity blamed. He had suspected something was wrong, but he had not expected an armed faction prepared to destroy an entire chamber full of diplomats. The conspirators advanced quickly, their path cutting straight toward the council speaker. Guards attempted to intercept them, but one conspirator hurled a sonic disruptor that sent half the chamber stumbling back in pain. Elias felt the vibration hit his chest like a punch, but he staggered upright. The bees, however, reacted differently. The moment the sonic pulse hit the floor, the hive responded with perfect coordination. The hum became a rapid thrum, a sound Elias knew well. Scout mode. Assessment. Decision. He felt the air shift as the hive prepared for emergency action. He whispered softly, "Not yet. We need to understand the threat first." But the conspirators provided that answer immediately. The one with the detonator lifted it high, shouting something in his own guttural language. The translation badge on his chest flickered. All blame on humanity. They brought the contaminant creature. Initiate termination. Elias blinked hard. Contaminant creature. They meant the bees. Of course they did. They had planned everything. A crystalline delegate shouted for security, but the guards were still disoriented. The conspirators raised their weapons again, clearly preparing a second sonic pulse. Elias had seen enough. He knew what bees did when a predator stood too close to their queen. Even if the hive had no queen present, their instinct to defend remained unwavering. He set the bee box down gently. "You will not like what happens next," he said quietly. The nearest conspirator scoffed and strode forward. He kicked the box. That was his last mistake. The lid cracked open with a soft pop, barely an inch, but it was enough. A stream of golden black bodies poured out in disciplined spirals. The chamber filled with gasps as the bees moved not with chaotic buzzing but with coordinated formation, swirling in tight matrices like a shimmering ribbon of motion. They did not scatter wildly. They did not sting indiscriminately. They formed ranks. Delegates stumbled backward in awe and terror. Guards reached for their weapons but hesitated, unsure if firing would provoke the swarm into true aggression. Elias stepped forward, raising one hand in an easy, familiar gesture. It was the same motion he used when calming a hive during inspections, the same reassurance he had offered countless times at home. The bees responded, forming a circular pattern around him before redirecting inward toward the threat. The conspirators froze. The one with the detonator began trembling, his weapon shaking in his grip. He pressed a button on the device, but nothing happened. A single bee had landed on its surface, blocking the sensor with its tiny body. The alien gasped in disbelief. Another bee landed on his wrist. Then 3 more. None stung, but the message was clear. Elias took a step toward the conspirators. They backed up immediately. "You wanted to show the council how dangerous humanity is," he said. "But the only danger I see here is your own sabotage." The bees shifted again. A portion of the swarm broke away, circling around the hall with extraordinary precision. They passed over each delegate, lingering only long enough to register pheromonal signatures. Elias understood exactly what they were doing. Bees could detect fear, aggression, chemical traces of stress responses. And lies. Oh, how well they detected lies. Within seconds, the swarm condensed in front of 2 delegates seated near the back. The bees hovered in a tight cluster above them, vibrating sharply. The delegates gulped. The council speaker stared in shock. "The hive identifies conspirators," Elias said. "They sense the same trace pheromones on those 2 as on the saboteurs." The accused delegates protested wildly, but the bees tightened their circle, forming a dense, shimmering sphere around them. One of the guards tested the swarm's patience by stepping too close, and the bees collectively puffed up, wings flaring. The guard backed away instantly. For the first time, the council speaker seemed genuinely shaken. "Human Elias Hart, your species controls such organisms naturally." Elias exhaled slowly. "Not control. Cooperation. Bees do not follow me out of fear. We understand each other. They read emotions, intent, danger. You underestimated what partnership can look like." The conspirators attempted one last desperate move, lunging for the council speaker, but the hive reacted instantly. The swarm intercepted them mid-stride, enveloping their hands and faces with a buzzing shield. No stings. Just force. The conspirators dropped their weapons and fell to their knees, shaking violently. It was not pain that brought them down but pure psychological collapse. The council hall fell silent except for the steady hum of the hive. Delegates stared at Elias as though seeing him for the first time, not as a simple beekeeper but as a man who had just thwarted a coup without violence, aided only by the smallest creatures on earth. Elias knelt beside the box. The swarm contracted, returning gradually to their hive. Each bee moved with calm precision, no longer alarmed. Elias waited until the last one entered before carefully closing the lid. He stood slowly. The chamber was motionless, stunned. That is what humans do, he said quietly. We work with the world around us. We adapt. And we defend what matters. No one laughed this time. The council had finally learned to fear the beekeeper from Earth. And the hive that stood with him. Silence clung to the council chamber long after the last conspirator had been restrained. The guards, still shaken, formed a wavering perimeter around the recovered bee box as if it were a volatile artifact capable of rewriting fate with a single misplaced tap. Elias stood quietly beside it, breathing slowly while the hive settled into a gentle, contented hum. Delegates whispered among themselves, some in awe, others in fear, none quite ready to meet his eyes. The council speaker remained frozen, crystalline staff half raised, unable to resume protocol while the memory of the coordinated swarm still pulsed like phantom vibrations in the air. The chamber doors sealed automatically, locking all occupants inside for emergency review. No one complained. Every alien present had seen enough in the last few minutes to convince them that wandering freely while the situation remained unresolved might be a mistake of galactic proportions. Elias felt dozens of eyes fix on him. He rubbed the side of the bee box gently, grounding himself the same way he always did during hive inspections when the bees sensed weather shifts or predators. Only this time, the predators were political rather than natural. One of the crystalline delegates finally spoke, voice trembling through its faceted throat. The hive displayed advanced pattern recognition and threat response. This exceeds known Earth fauna capabilities. How do you explain this, human? Elias folded his arms, suddenly aware of how out of place his old canvas beekeeper jacket looked among shimmering robes and polished armor. Bees are ancient, he said. Older than your species. Older than mine. Nature has been refining them longer than you can imagine. Several delegates exchanged glances of disbelief. A slug-like diplomat oozed forward, its glossy surface reflecting fractured sunlight from the chamber ceiling. Its tone was cautious, almost respectful. You claim these creatures act with intelligence. They act with purpose, Elias replied. Intelligence is just one kind of purpose. A feathered representative shook its crested head. Purpose does not explain how they identified the saboteurs. Elias crouched beside the box, placing his ear near the wood. The hum was calm now, a slow rhythmic sound that reminded him of wind brushing through tall grass. Bees can sense chemical traces most species cannot, he said. Aggression, deceit, fear, stress. They read pheromones better than any instrument you have. They did not identify conspirators because I told them to. They did it because the conspirators smelled wrong. The warrior delegate scoffed. Primitive methods. Primitive but effective, Elias answered. Tension thickened again as the council speaker stepped forward, his scaled body shifting like flowing metal. His voice vibrated through the chamber. Human Elias Hart, your actions prevented a massacre. Yet your creatures raise serious concerns. Their disciplined behavior suggests a hive mind capacity beyond natural limits. Elias straightened to his full height. They are not weapons. They are living beings. I do not command them. I work with them. There is a difference. The hall remained unconvinced. Delegates leaned back cautiously, as though he might at any moment unleash the hive again. Elias felt irritation simmer beneath his patience. They truly believed humans wielded everything like a tool or threat. They did not understand cooperation that did not rely on domination. The council speaker motioned to the guards. Bring forward the conspirators. The prisoners were dragged into the center. Their armor had been removed, leaving them trembling in thin, gray underlayers. The bees had left faint dusty traces of pollen and warmth on their skin, a reminder of the expectant energy that had enveloped them earlier. The conspirators refused to look at Elias or the bee box. Their fear was palpable. A tentacled delegate slithered close to interrogate them. Why sabotage the hearing? Why implicate humanity? One of the conspirators growled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Humans accelerate too quickly. They threaten the balance. We aim to frame them for danger before they become one. Another conspirator hissed bitterly. And we underestimated their insect allies. The last word dripped with resentment. Elias resisted rolling his eyes. He had been underestimated plenty over the years by Earthbound people. Aliens, it seemed, were no different. The council speaker signaled for the guards to take the conspirators away for official inquiry. As the doors behind them sealed, the speaker turned back to Elias. We must evaluate the implications of what we witnessed. Your hive can detect hostile intent, potentially of any species in this chamber. A ripple of discomfort moved through the delegates. Elias felt the need to intervene before they spiraled into another panic spiral. Bees will not harm anyone unless provoked, he said. They defend. They do not attack without reason. The crystalline delegate countered. Yet they performed coordinated maneuvers that resemble military formations. Elias laughed softly, though there was little humor in it. You think everything coordinated must be militaristic. A beehive is not an army. It is a community. They protect their home. If you bring danger, they respond. That is all. An elderly delegate with bark-like skin leaned forward. Then why did they obey when you spoke? Elias breathed out slowly, choosing his words. Because I respect them. And they trust me. Cooperation is not the same thing as control. The room fell quiet again. Delegates exchanged glances as if trying to decide whether that explanation made the bees more comforting or more terrifying. The council speaker paced slowly around the platform, his metallic scales catching refracted light. We request a demonstration, he finally declared. Show us how you communicate with them. Without violence. Without confrontation. Prove this partnership is peaceful. Elias hesitated. The bees had already endured enough stress for one day. Opening the hive again might alarm them. But refusing could spark suspicion or worse, a containment vote on humanity. He knelt carefully beside the box and opened only the smallest part of the lid, allowing the hive to feel the open air without releasing more than a few scouts. A handful of bees emerged cautiously, drifting in gentle arcs. Elias extended a hand, palm relaxed. One landed on his finger. Another explored his wrist, its legs tickling lightly. He whispered to them in a rhythm they understood, not through language but tone. They settled, unthreatened. Delegates leaned forward as though watching a miracle. Elias closed the lid again, softly and respectfully. The hive stayed calm. This is what cooperation looks like, he said. Not chaos. Not aggression. Trust. But the peace did not last. A sudden vibration thundered through the chamber floor. Delegates grabbed railings as the walls trembled. A blaring alarm filled the room in harsh, repetitive pulses. Elias looked around in confusion. What now? He whispered. A guard checked a wrist display. External breach detected. Unauthorized vessel approaching. Impact likely. Delegates panicked again, all composure lost. Elias felt the hive react immediately, their agitation rising like heat from sun-baked soil. The tremors grew stronger as the alarm blared, rattling the chamber lights until they flickered like frantic fireflies. Delegates clung to their seats or braced themselves against nearby pillars while guards attempted to create some semblance of defensive formation, though the panic rendered their movements uneven and confused. Elias felt every vibration through the bee box at his feet, and more importantly, he felt how the hive responded. Their hum sharpened into a low, thick resonance, the kind that bees produced when a storm approached or when a predator lurked near the hive entrance. Instinct drove him to drop to one knee and place his palms against the wood, whispering steady reassurances that barely held their agitation together. The council speaker tried to regain control, his voice echoing through the chamber. Maintain positions. Identify incoming vessel. But the crystalline calm he usually commanded was breaking. A junior guard shouted over the alarm, panic cracking his tone. The vessel is on collision vector with the station. Shields are compromised. It is forcing entry. Delegates erupted into chaotic argument. Some demanded evacuation. Others screeched that they were trapped by the lockdown protocol. A particularly dramatic ambassador fainted sideways off its chair with a wet thump. Through this growing chaos, Elias remained crouched beside the hive. The bees could sense danger more acutely than any technological warning system. Their hum rose and fell in jittery waves, matching the intensifying tremors from the station hull. Suddenly a violent impact slammed through the chamber, knocking everyone sideways. Elias fell onto his shoulder, shielding the bee box with his body as the platform skidded half a meter. Shouts and metallic crashes erupted around him. When the light stabilized, a massive scar tore across the chamber wall as a glowing breach opened, hot plasma dripping from its jagged edges. A silhouette appeared in the molten dust. The intruder stepped through with a confidence that chilled the room. Taller than any species present, clad in segmented armor and moving with predatory certainty, this new threat dwarfed the conspirator's scale entirely. Its mask glowed with a sinister red slit across its center, while cables pulsed along its arms like veins filled with liquid fire. Guards raised their weapons, but the intruder ignored them, scanning the chamber with calculating interest. The council speaker raised his staff. "Identify yourself." The armored figure pointed at Elias. "Target acquired." Guards moved as one, charging forward, but the intruder lifted one arm and unleashed an electromagnetic shockwave that blasted them back as though they weighed nothing. They hit the far wall with sickening thuds. Delegates dove behind tables. Elias felt the floor hum with a new frequency as the hive reacted to the threat. The intruder continued advancing, its heavy footsteps shaking the chamber. Elias stood slowly, keeping one hand on the box. The bee hum grew sharper, angrier. He could not allow them to swarm blindly. They were powerful, but facing a being like this head-on would put them in real danger. He swallowed hard. "What do you want?" Elias asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The intruder cracked something resembling a smile beneath its mask. "Biological weaponry. Your hive. The conspirator report matches. Acquisition of Earth biomatter has been approved by our command. You and your swarm will come with me." So this was more than sabotage. This was a coordinated extraction. Someone believed that Earth bees were advanced enough to serve as biological assets. Elias felt a chill crawl down his spine. He had always admired bees for their complexity, never imagining that someone else might see them as weapons. The hive buzzed violently under his fingers. "You will not take them," Elias said, surprising himself with the strength in his tone. The intruder lunged. Too fast. Too strong. Its claw-like gauntlet reached for the box, and Elias instinctively stepped back. The hive reacted instantly. The lid shook as bees surged inside, preparing for emergency defense. Before Elias could whisper a warning, a single bee burst out from the corner seam. Then another. And another. They did not erupt in fury like before. Instead, they spiraled upward in a tight formation that coalesced above Elias's head. The pattern was not defensive. It was signaling. The bees moved with deliberate intention, drawing loops and arcs in the air. "The queen has left the hive." Elias froze. That was impossible. The queen only left in very specific circumstances, swarming, escaping danger, or forging a new colony. None fit the moment. Yet here she was. The queen bee, larger and more radiant than the others, floated forward on gentle wings and landed squarely on Elias's shoulder. The entire chamber gasped. Even the intruder hesitated. In many alien cultures, the act of a sovereign creature selecting an ally was a sacred symbol of alliance. A living coronation? Delegates murmured as ancient protocols flickered in their minds. The queen's decision had shifted the room's energy instantly. The intruder growled. "Symbolism is irrelevant. The target remains the hive." But now every delegate understood the meaning. The queen had chosen Elias. That bound the hive to him in a way that extended beyond Earth biology, and into shared interspecies respect traditions. The council speaker raised his staff in alarm. "You cannot harm him now," the speaker declared. "It violates alliance doctrine." The intruder scoffed. "Your doctrines are meaningless to us." It lunged again. The bees reacted before Elias even breathed. The swarm shot forward like a living storm, but not in chaos. They shielded Elias's body, forming a dense buzzing armor of wings and motion. Bees swarmed the intruder's gauntlet, not stinging but interfering with its sensors. The creature swiped at them violently, but they moved as one cohesive cloud. Elias saw the detonator device on the intruder's belt, and felt the danger spike. The bees sensed it too. They shifted formation, not toward attack but toward distraction. A cluster darted straight at the intruder's faceplate, dancing erratically to overload its vision sensors. The intruder staggered, swinging blindly. Its claws scraped the floor, sending sparks flying. Delegates scrambled farther back. A brave guard attempted to strike from behind, but the intruder knocked him away with effortless force. Elias knew the bees could not win through numbers alone. They had courage but not invincibility. He scanned the chamber for something, anything he could use. His gaze caught the discarded councilhood smoker device lying near the collapsed guard table. It resembled a ceremonial incense burner, but functioned similarly to his earth smoker. He dashed toward it, sliding across the smooth floor as he reached for it. The intruder noticed, roaring as it attempted to tear through the bee shield. Bees intensified their assault, swirling faster, clouding every lens and sensor it possessed. Elias lit the device with trembling hands. Thick aromatic smoke billowed out, not harmful but disorienting to most biological systems. He aimed it at the intruder just as the bees parted to create a corridor for the smoke. The creature stumbled, sensors. The intruder's unconscious form was dragged from the chamber by a squad of guards, sparks still snapping from its armor as they hauled it away. A heavy silence settled over the council hall, not the fearful kind that had filled it earlier but the stunned, breathless quiet of beings witnessing something far beyond what their experience had prepared them for. Elias felt the queen bee shift delicately on his shoulder, her tiny movements somehow heavier than the weight of every alien gaze pressing in on him. He exhaled slowly, placing a hand over the bee box, feeling the hive inside finally easing out of its defensive agitation. Delegates emerged from their hiding places one by one, peering at him with expressions ranging from awe to bewilderment to something resembling reverence. The council speaker approached him with hesitant steps, his crystalline staff no longer raised in command but held like a simple support. His voice vibrated softly as he spoke. Human Elias Hart, what occurred here has changed the course of this hearing. What you and your hive accomplished was unprecedented. This chamber owes you its survival. Elias rubbed the back of his neck, wishing he had something clever to say but coming up empty. I am just a beekeeper. The hive does what it needs to do. I just help guide it. Sometimes. A delegate with bark-like skin stepped forward, his deep-set eyes thoughtful. Your queen chose you in the presence of the council. Such an act carries profound meaning. By some culture standards, you are now bound to the hive not simply as caretaker but as partner. This alliance cannot be disregarded. Elias blinked. Alliance sounds like a big word for someone who spends most of his time digging wax out of his hair. Some delegates emitted soft laughter, the tension lifting slightly. But the council speaker lifted his staff and tapped it once on the platform floor. The chamber lights shifted to a pale blue hue signifying decision processing. The speaker's voice took on its formal resonance. Before we proceed with humanity's status evaluation, we must consider the implications of what we have witnessed today. Humanity was accused of volatility, unpredictability, and potential threat. Yet when the station was breached, many species panicked. Guards were incapacitated. Order failed. Only one being in this chamber acted with clarity and purpose. Elias swallowed uncomfortably as every eye turned toward him again. The speaker continued. You, a representative without training or weaponry, protected this council through cooperation rather than force. Your hive demonstrated collective intelligence that rivaled our most advanced reconnaissance systems. And the Queen's bond indicates a level of interspecies trust we have not seen in generations. Another delegate raised a trembling hand. We feared humans for their adaptability. Yet today, that adaptability saved us. Perhaps it is not danger we should fear but the potential for partnership. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Elias stood frozen, unable to decide whether he should feel proud, terrified, or deeply embarrassed by all the attention. The queen bee wandered from his shoulder to his collar, prompting him to remain perfectly still. Even the smallest movement felt monumental under the weight of diplomatic scrutiny. The council speaker raised his staff again. In light of these events, the motion for containment classification is hereby nullified. Instead, a new motion is proposed. Earth is to be designated as a scientific resource priority. Cooperation with humanity will be encouraged, and the study of Earth's biological systems, particularly the hive organism, is to be conducted under ethical guidelines. Does the Council agree? Voices echoed in unison. Agreement. 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 The decision passed unanimously. Elias let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. Delegates straightened their robes or adjusted their ceremonial armor, visibly relieved that the hearing had reached a peaceful resolution. The council speaker turned back to him with something almost gentle in his expression. Elias Heart of Earth, we offer you a position as ambassador to the Galactic Council. Your experience with cooperative species makes you uniquely suited to foster trust between worlds. We hope you will consider this role. Elias stared at him. Ambassador? Me. I have a farm. And bees. And I'd burn toast more often than I get it right. A crystalline delegate stepped forward. We will provide means for maintaining your apiary. You may return home as needed. Our intention is not to take you from your world, but to invite your world into ours. Elias opened his mouth, then closed it again. The queen buzzed softly, nudging his neck as if encouraging him. The hive was calm. Safe. And for once, he felt his presence here had real purpose. I will accept, he finally said. But only if my bees come with me. Laughter rolled through the chamber like a relieved wave, easing the formality of the moment. The speaker nodded. Of course. They would likely protest if separated. As the council moved to finalize the documentation, Elias allowed himself to sit on the platform edge, resting the bee box on his lap. He whispered gently to the hive, thanking them as he always did after a difficult day. The bees responded with soft, warm vibrations that soothed the remaining adrenaline from his bloodstream. Within an hour, the lockdown ended. Delegates dispersed with lingering glances of respect. Guards saluted him, still looking uneasy around the box but no longer terrified. As he walked through the long corridor leading to the shuttle bay, the queen bee flew briefly from his shoulder, circled his head, and settled gracefully back into place. A few passing diplomats bowed instinctively at the sight of her. When Elias boarded the transport shuttle back toward the surface of the council station, he took a final look through the viewport. The stars shimmered like thousands of tiny wings, stirring gently in the cosmic distance. It reminded him of home, of warm mornings in his orchard with sunlight dancing off the bees and golden arcs. He returned to Earth a week later, landing his new ambassadorial shuttle beside his farmhouse. The familiar scent of wildflowers and freshly tilled dirt wrapped around him, grounding him instantly. His hives buzzed excitedly as he approached, as though sensing the strange news stories woven into his clothes. Weeks passed. Alien scientists visited his farm regularly, stumbling through his fields with awkward reverence, desperate to understand the creatures that had reshaped an interstellar political order. Some were terrified of the bees. Others were oddly charmed. Elias found himself explaining the basics of pollination to beings with no concept of flowers, laughing as they struggled to understand why honey was not used as a chemical solvent. One afternoon, as Elias was checking a hive, a sleek metal pod descended nearby. He walked toward it cautiously. The door opened with a hiss, revealing a small hexagonal crate inside. A diplomatic label blinked on its surface. Gift from the Galactic Council to Ambassador Elias Hart. He opened the crate slowly. Inside was a hive. Not from Earth. The frames glowed faintly with soft bioluminescent patterns. Alien bees, shimmering with iridescent stripes and crystalline wings, stirred restlessly. Elias stared in awe. The queen bee on his shoulder buzzed curiously. He smiled. Well, he murmured, this is going to be interesting.